Hello everyone and welcome to the demonstration videos. So just a heads up, these videos is basically for all of the Microsoft applications that we are using in this course. So all of your projects for Word, Excel, Access, and PowerPoint, I'll be showing you how to do different parts of the project through these videos. Now please know that I'm not going to go step by step through those projects specifically, but I will be providing examples for each of the projects. So for each of these, let me just show you real quick. Just know that I will be following along with the given skeleton notes that you find in the resource pages. So just please make sure if you do want to follow along or take notes, go to these skeleton notes. Mine's as a PDF, but just know that the ones you download are Word documents. You could type along different notes in these Word documents if you would like. You could print these out and also write out notes, but just know that I will be following this structure. Sometimes I'll bounce back and forth, but whatever skills are shown here in these documents, I'll go over in these demonstration videos. And it will help you for your projects. Again, it's not a one-for-one, but those skills I show you will help you with completing the projects. If there are any documents that I need you to download from the Canvas, just make sure you are going to the resources page as well. I do provide, if I could show real quick. There we go. I do provide specific in-class documents, or you could just think it as demo resources that you could download to follow along. So if I tell you to download a certain document, just please be sure you go to the resources page, download the document, and you could follow along if you would like. All right. Now for this demo video, I know that was a bit of an introduction, but for this demo video, we're going to go over Word Chapter 1. And the reason why you've been seeing my computer desktop the entire time is because first, we need to actually open the Word application. So you should have already downloaded the application onto your device. Again, you do get it for free with your student email. Just make sure you go check out that video real quick on how to get it. All right. But let's go ahead and open it up. Now, again, these demo videos are for Windows computers. Unfortunately, if you have a Chromebook or if you have Mac OS, they're going to be very different from what you see in these videos. So just please keep that in mind. There are other YouTube resources you could use for those. Okay, so if you have Windows, you're going to go over to your Start button down here in the bottom left. There we go. And let me go ahead and I do have my documents pinned here, but you could just look up Word. There we go. And it will be this icon with the blue rectangle with a W on it, and it's called Word. And you could go ahead, the icon, you could double click or just click, or you could click open here. So let me go ahead and click on it. Oh, and it popped up in another screen for me. Let me bring it in for everyone to see. There we go. All right. Now I need to give a breakdown on how to navigate the Microsoft Word applications in general. So every time you open up an application, you get something that looks a little like this. For you, you may not have all these recents for your computer, but at least the general setup will look the same for you. Let me do a quick breakdown. So up here, you do notice that there are different templates you could use in Word document. We won't be using these, but just know there are templates that you could use, which is basically like preset themes and layouts that you could just start editing. But for us, majority of the time, either you are downloading a document I made for you to work off of, or you'll be making your own. All right, but this start area, this is in your home section. Do know that if you want to open a new document from here, you could go down on the left side. There is an open section. There we go. And then you could navigate to your documents from here. Just always go ahead and click on Browse. I always recommend using Browse. And there we go. And you can navigate to the document you want to open up. Okay. The New button. There we go. You could also use this to find different templates to use or start a new document, but you could still do the same from your home section. So always in your home section, this is where you could start off. Okay. Now, if you're following along for this video, there is nothing you need to download. Actually, we're going to make our own document from scratch. So let's go ahead. If you want to create a completely new Word document, just click on Blank Document over here. One click. And we're brought to this screen. All right. Now, how this is set up is actually, again, very similar to other Word applications. So I am going to do a breakdown for a lot of terminology I'll be using throughout the course, throughout these demonstration videos. So I'm going to have your attention go up here to the very top. This is called a ribbon. So this long strip up here is called a ribbon. Ribbons are how we navigate different features of the Microsoft applications. Ribbons are also broken up into different parts. The reason why I tell you this is when I'm telling you to do something for a certain part of an assignment, I will be using certain terminology. So just please make sure you're paying attention to this. Okay, so up here is the ribbon. And over here, you'll see that the ribbon is broken down into different tabs. Right now, you'll see one highlighted called Home. And if I go to the one that says Insert and click on it, notice that your options here, down here, will change. So each one of these are called tabs. Usually, I'll indicate to you what tab to be in so you can get to a certain feature. So if I tell you to go to the Home tab, you'll go up here, click on Home, click, and you go to Home. If I tell you to go to the Layout tab, you'll go to Layout here, click, and you find the options for the Layout tab. All right. Let me go back to the Home tab real quick. Okay. So we have our tabs. Then we also have something called groupings. So different groupings you'll actually see along within this area for each of the tabs. Groupings are basically, if you can see on your screen, the options are set up into kind of different rectangles. You could see lines separating each ones. And you'll see little titles underneath each of them. For instance, this group here is called font. So that's what a grouping is, a group of features. This one's font. This one here, you could see the lines blocking it off, is paragraph. So that's the paragraph group. This big one here is styles, and so on and so on. If you go to other tabs, like let's go back to the layout tab, you'll see that this also has different groups. We have the page setup group, the paragraph group, and the arrange group. So each tab has different groupings, and again, I'll tell you which group to go to for a certain feature. In each group, of course, you'll see that there are different buttons. Of course, if you're watching the video, you could see which button I'm clicking. I will try to explain what it looks like, but do know, just like how I have it right now, when I hover my mouse over it, so I just put the little mouse over the button, you'll see that it actually gives you the name. So if there's a certain instruction, or if I tell you to click on the, let's say, the bold button, like over here, you could just hover your mouse over each one and find the one that says bold. In this case, the one I'm hovering over right now is bold. All right, so there's certain buttons I'll have you click. If I tell you to click on a drop down, so notice like this here in the paragraph group, for practice, we'll just do the one that says bullets. Do know that there's the bullets button here, but then there's also kind of a little arrow on the side of it, which is also the same option, bullets. But this arrow is called a drop down. Notice when I click on it, it gives me more options. So do know that when I say click on the drop down, and I'll keep reiterating it, click on the little arrow, you'll get more options here. So some features do have a lot more options to choose from. You just have to click on the drop down arrow. All right. So those are the very basics of how to navigate the ribbon. So just know real quick, you have the ribbon itself, you have the tabs, which are up here, and then you have different groups in the tabs. If I tell you to go to a specific group and click on a certain feature button, you could hover over each one to know the specific one I'm asking for. And just make sure you're clicking the drop down when I say so. There are other navigation features that I will go over in the next video or as we go throughout the course. But again, I do advise watching the videos so you could actually see where I'm clicking and also following along. The best way to learn is to follow along. All right, with the ribbon in mind, let's actually get to working with Word documents. So this setup is specific for the Word document. And we've just opened our own document right now. Opening a new document doesn't mean that we actually have it saved onto our device. So I always advise saving the document first before you start anything. To do that, there's several ways. I'm going to show you one that is recommended. So to save a document, you're going to go over to your File tab. So click on your File tab, and you'll see that it takes us back to the Start area. Don't worry, this is exactly where we want to be. To save our document, over here on the left you have different options. I want you to click Save As. There we go. Now Save As will give you different options to save your document. Usually I recommend clicking Browse. What browse means is that it will save the document onto your computer, so somewhere in your file system. So if you click Browse, there we go. It'll take you to different parts of your system. And you could go ahead and navigate real quick to where you want to save your documents. I typically like putting it in the downloads because it's the easiest to access. I do recommend for your courses to create your own folder specific for CIS 101, so everything stays in the same place. All right, but let me go ahead. Again, for these demo videos, I'll just put in the downloads. But one of the biggest things is the file name. So down here, you could indicate how you want to name the file. For your projects, there's a specific way to name it. It'll be your first and last name, and then project, whatever the number is. So project 1, project 2. I'm going to call mine's my first and last name, Jasmine Ojeda Demo 1, but you could go ahead and just type it out in the file name. Make sure the Save As type says Word document, so when it saves, the file extension should be .docx. That indicates that it's a Word document. Okay, but once you put the file name, click Save. There we go, and you'll see that it's saved by up here at the top. It gives the new file name, Jasmine Ojeda Demo1.docx, or your first and last name, Demo1.docx. If you're doing the project, it'll be your first and last name, project 1. And it will say save to this PC. Once you have your file officially saved to the computer, then every time you make changes, you could just click the save button up here at the very top. Don't click the autosave. That is for the Microsoft OneDrive, which we won't be using much in this course. But go ahead, click on the save button to always save your progress. I'll also give another way in a little bit. All right, now with your document saved, now we could actually go ahead and start typing stuff into it. All right, so for typing into a document, let me go ahead real quick, increase the size so you could see. If you're having trouble looking at the document itself, just know that over here on the bottom left, there's a little slider that allows you to zoom out. Oh, there we go, zoom out or zoom in. It helps especially if the text is really small for you to read. On your keyboard, another way to do that, again for Windows computers, but another way to do that is holding down on the Control key. So that key is on your, should be on your bottom left of your keyboard. Hold down, and on your mouse, the little scrolling, the little wheel, you could go ahead and, there we go. You could zoom out and you could zoom in. All right. So every time you see me zoom in and out, I'm doing the little hold down on Control key and zooming out and in. But you could do the same down here with the slider. Okay. Now, for typing stuff into your document, it's real simple. So notice when I click into my document, so you just click on the page here, and yes, this is the page that you see. Oh, there we go. You'll notice that there's a little blinking line here. Let me increase it. There we go. There's a little blinking line. That is called your insertion point. I will tell you at certain points of these demos to put your insertion point in certain areas of the document. That means your little blinking line, that blinking line needs to be at certain areas. Having it placed in very specific areas is very important. You'll see why throughout this course. All right, but when you see that blinking line, that means we could start typing. So when I start typing, it'll actually appear on the page. So it's just typing simply. There we go. Typing simply, I could just type hello world. My name is Jasmine Ojeda. There we go. So just typing it out simply, you could put in those lines. All right. So that's for typing into a document. Some other things you could do is if you hit the Enter key, it takes you down to the next line and you could keep on typing. My favorite color is blue. And you could click Enter again, and you could keep typing. My favorite fruits are oranges and watermelons. All right, so go ahead, type out at least 3 lines of text. Do notice if you keep typing, let me keep typing. Unicorns are cool, and I like cats and dogs. I like to paint and write stories. There we go. So just type out, it could be a couple of paragraphs, it could be a couple of lines. Do notice every time you hit enter, everything's nicely spaced between each other. So this line has a nice space between the next once you hit enter, but this one, once I keep typing throughout the paragraph, this part is kind of kept with each other. So notice the space here is different from the space between this line and the next. So when you create paragraphs, it formats it very nicely so you know which one's a paragraph and which one's a line. All right, so again, just write out a couple of different lines. Each of them, one of them could be a paragraph, it could just be simple sentences. But once you're done with that, so we have at least 3 lines written, you've put the enter key twice. I want you to go to your home tab, so make sure you're in your home tab, and in your paragraph group, you're going to find a fancy little symbol, looks like a very fancy backwards P, and this is called your show and hide. go ahead and click on it once. And you'll see that your document kind of changed a little bit. There's a lot of different dots and symbols that we're not quite sure what it means. I'll explain real quick. So what show and hide is basically a way for us to see the invisible characters that we type. What do I mean by invisible characters? Well, we call those white spaces. That's anything from spaces themselves. So notice all the spaces have turned into little dots. So every time you see a dot, that means there's a space there. So white spaces are the things we can't necessarily see, but they help us with formatting the paper. You'll notice that at the end of each of these lines, there's that same symbol. This is called a paragraph break. I'll provide a little table of how each of those symbols look, but you could also draw it out in your notes in your notes or your skeleton notes. But this here indicates a paragraph break. And notice if I go ahead to the beginning of my third line and I hit the backspace, so I delete once, that paragraph break is gone. And if I hit enter, it appears and it makes that break between these two lines. So that symbol is a paragraph break. Another way to delete it, and actually another way to select text, is notice how I've selected these is I've just gone ahead and click my insertion point at one point, and I've clicked and hold the key and drag your mouse across the screen. There we go. So that's how you can select certain text, certain lines. If I keep going down, so I've click and I click and hold, drag across the screen. There we go. I've selected multiple lines. You could also select different parts. You just have to kind of shimmy your mouse a little bit to select maybe specific characters, include specific parts. All right. For selecting certain text, you could also double click. There we go. I could go over a certain word and double click. You'll select that word. If you want to select the entire line, just click 3 times. So real fast, 1, 2, 3. Selects the entire line. Same thing here. 1, 2, 3. Whoa, actually that one did it pretty quick. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. There we go. Does the entire paragraph. So that's some other ways to insert or select, how to select text. Okay, now let's go back to the show and hide. Sorry, that was a small tangent. The show and hide. So one of your biggest ones is spaces are little dots here. And notice, let me go down here to the bottom. So I click enter. Notice that our paragraph break is here. But if I keep hitting space, 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 you'll see all of those little dots. So that means there's a whole bunch of spaces here. But if you turn off show and hide, so if you don't want to see these characters anymore, go to your home tab, go back to that backwards P symbol, the show and hide, and click it once. Notice that now it's not grayed out anymore. That means it's deselected and all of those characters disappear. They still exist there, but we can't see exactly where they are. For instance, you don't know how many spaces are here. Show and hide is really good. Let me turn it back on. Show and hide is really good to see specific characters on your screen. Again, it helps with formatting. Also, if you've ever had a time where you're working on a document and you're not quite sure why it looks wonky, sometimes it's because of a character you don't see. So turn on show and hide and see these weird little characters. Like in this case, these spaces. I could just be like, oh, I don't want that. And you could go ahead, select it, and backspace to delete. All right. So your biggest symbols for show and hide are spaces and paragraph breaks. For you to follow along, go to the beginning of your third line. So in my case, it's my last paragraph. I put the insertion point at the very beginning, so before my, and go ahead and backspace to get rid of the paragraph break. All right. Now, sometimes we don't want things to be completely separated by paragraphs, but we need to put stuff on a different line. That's something we called a line break, which to do that, go ahead and hold down on the Shift key. That's the key also on the bottom left of your keyboard. It's above the CTRL, the control. It should say Shift, hold down on it, and hit the Enter key. And you'll notice we don't get a paragraph break symbol. We get this little line here. That's called a line break. And notice the spacing between these two lines look very similar to just how the paragraph looks. So this is nice, again, if you want to keep stuff still together, kind of like if it's all the same information, like in my case, everything I like. But you need to separate certain lines from each other. So that's a line break. Helps you keep, again, just still some formatting, put things on a different line, but does not have the same spacing as a paragraph break. All right. For part of your assignment, there's certain areas where I ask you to replace paragraph breaks with line breaks. So just make sure, again, like maybe if I want these two lines to go together, make sure you go to, you could either select the paragraph break here and delete it, or like how I always like to say, go to the beginning of the line after the paragraph break. So you have the paragraph break here, then go to the beginning of the line after it, and then backspace, and then do your line break. So Shift, hold down on Shift and Enter. There we go. Okay. One last symbol to show you for the show and hide. If you go to the beginning of your third line, so just put your insertion point there, hit your Tab key. So again, that's on the left side of your keyboard. Hit Tab. Oh, and actually this one doesn't seem to show. Let me go ahead and undo it. If you ever want to undo a certain feature, you could go up to the top of your screen. There's a little undo button, kind of looks like a little symbol going back on itself. You could hit it. Or another way on your keyboard is to hold down on Control and Z. Okay. But that wasn't the symbol I was trying to show you. Let's actually go here. Go in between any word in your sentence and then hit the Tab key. There we go. Now it's not going to show really properly here, but you'll notice that tabs, again, you can think of it as a big space, has a little arrow. So it displays as an arrow. And if I want to get rid of that little space there, I just go behind it and delete it. There we go. But tabs, again, they're big spaces. They'll appear as arrows. Please make sure you see these arrows when you are doing your assignment, your project. I'll ask you to put tabs in certain areas. Please, I am going to look for these arrows, so please make sure you have it set. All right, so those are your show and hide symbols. Again, make sure you write them out. You can fill out the little table in the skeleton notes. But for now, we're going to move away from show and hide, and I'm going to go ahead and turn it off. So again, Home tab, paragraph group, that backwards P, click, and it's off. All right, so that was show and hide. Let's go ahead and do some very basic formatting. So this one will be really quick and easy, but for formatting certain text, you could type everything out. Usually I recommend typing everything out first, and then you could format, just like how we have here. Let's go first to, if your first line, or just find, actually in this case, just use any words or text you want to mess around with. I'm going to go ahead and highlight my name, Jasmine Ojeda. So again, just click and drag across certain text, or you could double click for a single word. Make sure you have that gray highlight around it. That means it's selected. All right. And for formatting, how text looks like. So notice everything's kind of the same. Let's spice it up a little bit. I'm going to have you go to your Home tab, and we're going to take a look at the font group. So here in the font group, you could do things like this big B here. is the bold button. If I click it, it makes my text a lot more thicker. Notice that the B is consistently highlighted with the text I've selected. That means bold is on. The text is bold. If I click away from that text, so anywhere else, notice that the B is not highlighted here. That means this text isn't bold. If I click here, this text isn't bold. But if I click into the text I just bolded, there we go, it's highlighted. All right. So that's bold. Another way to do that, or actually if you want to deselect it, just select the text again and click on the bold. There we go, and that means it's turned off. All right. Another way to do that is you select the text and do Control on your keyboard, Control B. There we go. Let me go to another word. All right. So select any other word. Next to the bold button is a slanted I. That's called your italics. And if you click on it, it just slants everything to a certain side. Could add some emphasis. Both of these are emphasis formatting. And then notice here, the I is also highlighted. If I click anywhere else, no highlights because none of these are italics, only my word here, Ojeda. If I want to deselect it, just again, the same with the bold, I click on it, deselects. All right. So I could select an entire sentence and I could bold it. Notice it adds emphasis. And I could also apply italics as well. There we go. So notice you could add multiple formattings to it. There are 3 buttons here for formatting. There's your bold, italics, and underline. Again, you could select any text and underline still works the same. The drop down, there's different features. You don't have to worry about that for this course. But you could just click on the underline button. There we go. And it underlines the text. And I could still make it italics and bold. All right. So that's some of your simple formatting. Again, for keyboards, to bold, you could do Control B. Italics, you could do Control I. And underline is Control U. Okay, just make sure, again, I recommend typing out the text first and then selecting and applying those formatting. All right, so those are the 3 main emphasis formattings. Other things you could do, go ahead and select all of your text in your document. To do that, you could also do Control A. There we go. And we're going to change certain parts of the entire document. Go back to your font group. So Home tab, Font Group. And up here you see this text. It may say something different, but usually Microsoft Word defaults to Aptos. This is your font. More specifically, it's your font style or a font family. If you click on the drop down, so the little arrow, you'll see different fonts you could apply, and you'll see some that look familiar, like your Times New Roman. Notice when I hover my mouse over the option, it gives me a preview on the page here of how it would look. So right now it's still Aptos, so it's still the style Aptos. If I hover over Times New Roman, it shows me the preview for Times New Roman. And I could scroll down to the other ones and see, there we go, you can see different styles. Ugh, this one's very dramatic. But I could hover over different styles and see which one I would like to use for my document. Styling is always different. Or the ones that my professor or job is asking of me. All right. Other Times New Roman, if you don't want to scroll through all this, you could always type up the name here. So you could always just directly type in, like in this case, Times. There we go. It gives me Times New Roman, but it'll also give you recommendations. Once you type it out or you find the font you want, just go ahead and click on it, and it sets your selected text to that font style. All right. So for that, you have to go to your Home tab font group and click here in the font drop down. Okay, so that's your font styles. For the size, again, select the text you want to change the size of, or in this case, we're going to select everything. And next to the font options, you'll see a number. That's your font size. How big is it on the screen? You could click on the drop down and find the font size. So notice the bigger the number, the bigger it gets on your screen. And I haven't selected it yet. Same thing, you could just hover your mouse and it shows you a preview. And of course, smaller numbers makes it smaller. Let's put it to 14. There we go. If you want a number different from the options you have, again, you could click into just the box and type in your number. So maybe if I wanted, let's say 13, just put the number, hit enter. There we go. You can make it as big as you want. For instance, sometimes I'll do, let's see, 100. There we go. And let me zoom out. You see that really takes up these pages. We like typically using things with a 12-point font. That's usually the standard. But again, it depends on your document. But again, make sure you select the text appropriately. If I only select this paragraph and I change the font size to 10, notice only my selected text changes to that formatting. Same with the style. If I change it back to, let's do this fancy one, Algerian. There we go. Notice that the text I selected changes with the formatting I gave it. So just be careful. Always make sure you are selecting the text first. Always be sure you're selecting the text you want to change. And then you're applying the formatting. All right. So that's some formatting. The very last one that I know you'll have fun with. Let's do colors. Colors and highlighting. Select any text in your document. I'm going to select the word blue. And in your font group, so Home tab font group, you'll see that there is a symbol with an A on it, and typically you'll see a color underneath. Most of the time the default is red. If you click on the drop down, so this is called font color, if you click on the drop down, you'll see different colors you could apply. I will say for your assignments, I'll ask for very specific colors. If you hover over each one, you'll see that each color has a name for it. I'm not going to be too picky about the colors you choose. I'll have there'll be a very specific name, but if you get close to the example provided, you'll be okay. I just want to see that you could change the font color. All right, but if you want a color, just go ahead, select it. Let me do something here. Let's do like a very bright blue, or this is turquoise apparently. You could click on it to select. And now that text is blue. I could select this line here, this sentence. And if I want to apply the blue again, notice here in the font color, it shows the color I last used. And if I just click on the button, it applies the same color I had before. So you don't have to keep doing the drop down and clicking. If you do want a different color, you do have to click on the drop down. And let's say I want to change this to orange, and you see the preview as well. Just go to your orange, click on it. There we go. And it's orange. All right. So this one you could have fun with. Heck, you could select individual characters. And like for my unicorn, I could make the rainbow. All right. That's for selecting font colors. Again, make sure you're selecting the text. And once more, for your assignments, I do have specific namings for some of the colors as said here, but again, just get it very close to what I asked of you, and you'll still get the points. All right, This last one isn't required of your assignment, but something fun you could use. You'll notice that the A here, this A symbol in your font group, is the font color. Next to it is the highlighter, which is different. Go ahead and select a certain part of your text. I'm going to select all of this. And click on the text highlighter color. Click on the drop down and select any of these colors. And you'll notice the background of the text changes. This is very nice for very big emphasis, especially if you're kind of highlighting stuff on a page. Very much like if you had notes and you were highlighting certain points. But that would be the same. And it works similarly to the text font. Again, you could just click on the button, use the color. It uses the color you last applied. All right. And if you want to get rid of the highlight, just select the areas that you highlighted, and you could go back to the text highlighter color drop down, and there's the no color. There we go. It gets rid of it for you. All right. So that's inserting text and doing some nice little formatting. Again, just make sure you're being careful what you are choosing, and of course, make use of your show and hide once more, your home tab, paragraph group, that backwards P, click on it once, and you could see those invisible characters, those white spaces, and click on it again to not see it anymore. When you submit your assignment, you don't have to have it set. This is only something for our application, so I have to go in and apply it, which I will. So just make sure it looks according to the assignment example. All right. That's it for Word Chapter 1 skills. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to shoot me an email or schedule a student hours with me. All right, thank you.